I'm thinking he's here to protect you. If we could call the meeting to order, or not.
Okay, let's get started.
Here he is. Tucker Whitman.
Here.
Andy Dennison.
Present.
Ben Vitale.
Present.
Grant Kyle. Paul Pichty.
Yes.
Aileen McNabb Coleman.
Present.
Joe DeForest.
Present.
Terry Baxter.
Aye.
Joseph Bennett.
Here.
Frank Reginelli.
Here.
Patrick Mahonic is excused. Timothy Lattimore.
Here.
Michael Didio.
Here.
Ryan Foley.
Present.
Keith Patman.
Here. If we could rise to the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I don't have a report tonight, of course, but I do have an announcement, and that is that and a question. And the announcement is this: I'm going to have what I'm terming a public listening session from 4:30 to 5:30 before the June 27th legislative session for anyone that wants to come in and talk about shared services. So it's just an opportunity for the public to come in if they have anything to say, any ideas to share or whatever. So you all will see that advertised. You're absolutely welcome to come, and you're welcome to comment if you wish, but it's not a legislative meeting. So the legislative meeting will start at 6 as scheduled. The second thing relates to the legislative meeting, and that is that in the past, in the summer, we've had our legislative meetings half an hour earlier. However, we're already starting at 6, and so I wanted to find out if people wanted to start at 5:30 or leave the meetings at 6 throughout the summer. So what do people want to do?
5:30.
6.
Okay. Well, let's. Right. I think how many people will actually have trouble getting here if we do it 5:30? Not. Okay, so let's keep it at 6, because if it's going to be a difficulty for people to get here that early, we don't want to create a problem for legislators. Okay, good. Thank you very much. Communications meeting.
Yes, sir. A letter from Ray Lockwood regarding the Cayuga County Farm Bureau's concern about the legislature submitting an amicus brief for the lawsuit being filed against the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation.
That's the only one. Yeah. So we're starting tonight with a discussion about the job description for our county administrator. So if I could turn it over to Mr. Miller.
Thank you. So I'm going to review what we've been going through since roughly the end of April with respect to a project that was brought in to facilitate primarily, and that is to come up with definitions and define roles, responsibilities, levels of authority, and boundaries for different entities within the county. So with respect to the chair, the legislative chair, the legislature and the oversight committees, county administrator function, and then the department heads. So I'm going to walk through a process that we use and then talk a little bit about getting into the job description and the specification. Yeah, Tim?
If you move the microphone on.
Will do. Thank you.
Thank you.
So basically, to start out with, the goals of the project as we started out was to define, document the key roles, responsibilities, level of authorities, and boundaries for the Cayuga County Legislative Chair, the legislative committees and oversight committee chairs, the county administrator and department heads. And a secondary, one of the primary outcomes that we were looking for with the project was essentially to define the job description or job specification for a county administrator based on what came out of item 1 up above. In terms of the process we used, we really focused the process on it started with input from focus groups. So this was before I actually got involved and started the project, but there was a series of focus groups that were held with department heads, with various entities within the county legislature to have some discussion around the county administrator role and whether and what that role should be, what were some of the key challenges with the role, issues, challenges, those types of things. So that was some initial input I received to kind of frame things and to begin to frame things for the project. Then the next thing in terms of the process was essentially facilitating a series of meetings. So this started roughly at the end of April. The first series of meetings was with the legislators themselves. And what we did during that time was to introduce a framework, what we call the Cayuga County operating framework, operational operating framework. And what that was meant to do was to begin to put a framework around how do we define roles, responsibilities, accountability, and level of authority, as well as the boundaries for each of the 4 entities that I talked about. And so we conducted that initial meeting in April, and then we conducted a series of meetings and facilitated a series of sessions between April and essentially last week. The last session we had was last Tuesday, or Wednesday, I believe it was, or Tuesday, June 7th, I believe it was. So basically what we did with that meeting was we focused that on facilitating those meetings was to gather input. So a lot of the focus there was gathered a lot of input with respect to the 4 entities that I discussed. We identified and started to frame and draft roles, responsibilities around some key functions. So really, a lot of the key functions we worked on were centered around how these 4 entities interact or have to interact and work together in terms of operating the county and the county government. We documented the revised Cayuga County Administrator job description as part of the process. And then today is kind of the final step in that process. There was an 8-step process to review that with the full legislature. So that's the process that we went through. So the next series of things to talk about are really focused on the job specification itself. And so after gathering that input, all the defining the roles, responsibilities, defining levels of authority, defining the boundaries for each of the 4 entities, that fed into creating the job description that we're going to be walking through this evening. And so key things in terms of distinguishing features, and I'm not intending to kind of read this whole thing out loud, but basically the focus of the county administrator is going to be to oversee, provide leadership, and have general supervision over departments within the county. So that's kind of the main crux of this. County departments, offices, agencies, county government structure, through the county administrator, maybe from time they may delegate that responsibility going forward. And so, some of the key elements of the typical work activities would be as outlined here. So first off, execute and enforce as authorized by the legislature. So essentially the focus here is the legislature defines those specific laws, acts, regulations, policies. But basically the administrator is responsible to make sure that the workings of the county are adhering to those laws, activities, ordinances, resolutions, and or regulations as defined by the legislature. And exercise general supervision over all county institutions, agencies, as well as be an advocate for county department heads within the legislature. So one of the things that came out after discussing and going through and reviewing this with a number of people, really from all aspects of the county government that we interviewed, the focus was, this person needs to be an advocate and needs to be able to advocate for the county departments, the county agencies, those types of things. So made sure we put that into the job description as well, or specification. Setting annual goals. This item is actually going to get modified slightly in terms of completing annual evaluations for department heads. We said excluding elected department heads, but there's also appointed department heads that basically are appointed, so that would be appointed either by statute, by law. Those would be people that essentially the administrator would give input to, but not essentially have the full responsibility to give the evaluation or full evaluation. Those entities are evaluated by a committee. So basically, that's one minor change we're going to be making with this. The balance of this, another key couple of things that came out were with respect to budget, the county administrator's role with respect to the budget. And so the focus of this is that the county administrator would be working with the budget office and work with department heads to put together a proposed budget for the county. And they would in fact present that proposed budget to the legislature. And ultimately, when the budget's approved, their responsibility is to ensure that the budget is being executed as voted on, as agreed by the legislature. So the key with that was that a lot of the input was people want to make sure that the administrator has an ownership of the budget at a high level, but not down at the detail level. You know, they don't need to necessarily know every intricate in and out of each department budget, nor should they, nor may not they have time to. So a big focus of that was keeping the administrator's role at a high level, making sure a budget gets put in, submitted, approved, and it's executed as submitted and approved, in fact, within the boundaries of that budget. So that's a key point that I wanted to make with the budget. The last one here too, develop, maintain professional relationship with all county elected officials to support the accomplishment of the county goals and objectives. Again, a key thing. A key element of this is in terms of the administrator and the working relationship is there'll have to be a strong working relationship, obviously, with the legislature, with the legislative chair, and with the department heads. And so really the focus there is making sure that as a new administrator gets brought into the organization, that there's a very strong relationship, number one, but also a very supportive and respectful relationship there. A few other key things to point out in terms of the details. Essentially, it's assist with coordination of policy, make recommendations to the legislature around policy. Again, the administrator doesn't have the authority to go make policy on their own, but those policies need to be recommended, brought before the legislature for review, for approval. Some other key things essentially is to review and approve resolutions by department heads or as committees may direct. So making sure those resolutions get brought forth and get reviewed and get voted on from the legislature, by the legislature. And then, conduct regular meetings with department heads, others as deemed necessary. And ultimately, the key here is they have the responsibility for approving the organization within a department or agency or an operation subject to her direct administrative control, and they'll have the administrative control of temporary assignments within that department. That's not to say that the operation from the department itself, the focus with the department heads with this is to make sure that department heads have the full authority, responsibility to operate their department within their set budget, within the guidelines and the policies and regulation and law that the county needs to adhere to or abide by. And then the general overall disclaimer here at the bottom, have the other such powers as deemed and conferred and imposed upon by him or her by resolution of the legislature. Some key things in terms of this next area is full performance knowledge, skills, abilities, personal characteristics. And so a few key things to point out here. This first one really is a key element of this, and that is the ability to maintain effective working relationships with employees, department heads, officials at various levels in the government. And so, the focus there is one of the keys with an incoming administrator is going to have the skills and the ability to work with a variety of different people, a variety of different levels, and really create good, solid, positive working relationships in that. Certainly the others are key: knowledge of principles of public administration, administrative management, organization and operation of budgetary procedures and practices, a good knowledge of human resource, labor relations principles and practices, and et cetera, down, as shown down through the list. And then qualifications, pretty straightforward. You possess either Master of Public Administration, Master of Business Administration degree, or a master's degree closely related to the field, and a minimum of 4 years paid full-time. Possess a bachelor's degree from an accredited college, university, and a minimum of 6 years of satisfactory full-time management responsibility and experience. The county administrator is to hold no other public or political office except upon approval of the legislature. And one other minor change that we made with this was that essentially, if they're not a resident of the county at the time of appointment, shall become so within 90 days of appointment or a time period to be agreed to by the legislature. So depending on the person, the circumstances may warrant extending that or changing that 90-day window. So that's the overview of the job description. So at this point, any questions that you might have? Andy?
Can you go back one screen there?
I can.
The very bottom one, I think you gotta be a little careful with.
Okay.
I mean, I'm just thinking, your HR guys here, I would think. I mean, I don't know how did that get defined, I guess, physical condition, I mean, you know.
Physical.
Well, I'd say a general kind of statement, anytime that you go through the application process, you make available to the person to identify any accommodations they would need. And so that's would be what would, I guess, complement this. There wouldn't be any specific physical restrictions that I'm aware of, but there's always that we have to do if, for example, the person had visual impairment and whatnot. Then we would ask for what kind of accommodation would they need? Would they need special readers or those kinds of things?
I'm just thinking the way it reads, you know, we could have the best qualified person in the world might be in a wheelchair.
Yeah.
And when you read that, it makes it sound like, you know, I'd hate to turn somebody away and turn them a lawsuit because they say, well, I was in a wheelchair, so they said I couldn't qualify for the job, that's all.
Doug?
I'm gonna look to our attorney. I'm having a little bit of an issue with the word ability. Just because somebody has the ability to compile data for reports and make presentations does not mean they are going to do so. I hate to say, change it to the word must in every one of those instances, but I have a hard time with that wording.
Has that a vendor done that?
Yeah.
I'm not sure how to respond. The use of the word ability appears in any number of other civil service job descriptions. It's to ferret out that set of skills, I think, as opposed to actually doing that. I would think that the actually doing would happen or be reviewed at the performance evaluation time. So no, I understand what you're saying.
You could include the term demonstrate, which would be part of, among other things, the reference process. Because they would, in an interview, either phone interview or personal interview, you could say, you have to demonstrate the ability to maintain effective working relationship.
Demonstrate proven to something so that when we get to the review process, they can, I mean, we could say you're not doing this and they say, well, I have the ability. And
And again, demonstrated works as good as anything that I've had in my experience. And again, that's part of the interview process. Okay,
It's really the only
this is
issue
the
I
job
have.
specification, it says demonstrated. Can you give me examples of where you have demonstrated those situations? That you can follow those up with reference checks that will verify that.
Hey, Terry,
Yep. Could that say ability and responsibility? Ability and responsibility to compile data, to build, so that it's
Would that
not
get
just
what you're
something
talking
that
about,
we
Tucker?
can do?
Yeah, I would be comfortable with that. Something more.
Well, that's my goal, to make it comfortable.
I know, Terry, I know. That's why I like it.
does that work, or?
Ability and responsibility.
That's what we're gonna do, is hold them responsible.
But responsibility isn't, and not to split hairs, but it's not a knowledge, skill, or ability. That the responsibility is bestowed on them. They would have responsibility for that. That would be in the distinguishing features or typical work activities. That's the responsibility. I would think in the KSAs, you would do that through demonstrated, the demonstrated ability.
Well, what's the one, is it the slide before that one talks about the expectations?
Typical work activity.
So this is work, these are work activities. Which basically.
Maybe that's the place to put it. I know what you're talking about, Tucker. in the-
Okay, I'm good with the demonstrate.
Even if you threw the demonstrate, it's something to add to it.
Demonstratability, and then lead abilities with demonstrate.
Keith.
It would make me more comfortable.
I'm fine with that. Frank?
An individual may give evidence that he's assuming responsibility, but he's not performing as far as full capacity. Okay, and if he's not performing in full capacity, could we put him in a situation of being insubordinate and incompetent?
Yeah, that's kind of what Tucker's getting at, I think, right, Tucker?
So therefore, I would like to say something that's concrete as far as performance.
Right.
Either be able to produce or else forget it.
Did we ever figure out, I know this next step was trying to figure out
I'm trying to wake you up.
less department heads that they have to evaluate? Or that's the next step past this process, right? The idea that there's 27 department heads, we're trying to get it down to, they can't manage.
Yeah, it's a
27.
different-
That's a
different
whole
process.
different
Yeah.
process, but-
Yeah.
But that's the goal. And then the other question is, I can't quite tell when we have committee meetings, is who's presenting? The administrator's presenting all the reports, or is each individual department head reporting?
So the way the way we frame that is that essentially the administrator and department heads would attend committee meetings, and then really it'd probably be a joint discussion between the administrator and department head who presented. So they both be there, or both be responsible to be there. I think we also said that at some point, administrator may delegate that based on what they have going on or that type of thing. But primarily, the goal was both be there and then discuss on who would present the actual information.
Yeah, and that's in the, that discussion is contained more in the, what's that thing called?
The operating framework.
The framework thing. That wouldn't be in the
Which is
job
in charge of
description
that
anyway.
operating framework, is that what we're talking about?
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah, that's what I was looking at.
yeah.
Okay, yeah. But, well, before we move off this, so how do we change this? Where are we with this? Because it would be good to get this wording done, because we're going to approve it tonight, hopefully.
Follow protocol. This man here has had his hand up for 5 minutes.
Resolving this, don't worry about it.
He has a different issue,
I'm
right?
sitting back here observing. Everything good
Well,
except for
he's
Tucker.
slouched down. Who could see him behind Andy?
Oh, all right.
So is ability, the ability to do and demonstrate, is that good? What was the wording that?
I would say that to be vague.
So I wrote down demonstrate the ability. So if you lead demonstrate the, with each, in front of each of those abilities, would that suffice?
Is that good for you? Okay, so we'll
Well,
make that,
need
we'll
to
Keith.
do that, not just have the ability.
make that change.
Listen, the question is, are we going to have an individual that's able to perform, or is it because he has the ability and he's not performing?
Well, if the requirement is to demonstrate the ability, and you don't demonstrate it,
But it could
going
vary-
in or during the year, but yes, so it
But to what
does.
degree?
Well, that's what an evaluation's about. I mean, how do you quantify that?
Okay. What kind of a predicament will that put us in if he has very, very limited ability and we need somebody of superior nature?
Don't hire him.
Yeah,
Well, he's already hired.
well, that's where the evaluation will come in, right? Joe?
It would seem like part of the interview process would be for the applicant to show their ability
Yeah, that's a good point.
to demonstrate.
Yeah, particularly if we put that, demonstrate the ability.
Right, or give
Yeah.
examples of their ability, right?
Right.
Demonstrating their ability.
Okay, good. Okay, well, that's good on that. Are there other issues with this, with the job description itself? Any concerns, changes? Ben?
I don't remember in any of our meetings talking about the requirements for a four-year degree or anything like that. And I have a problem with that because there's a lot of people out there that don't have a four-year degree, but yet have been managing large businesses or whatever for many years. And why would we exclude those type of people?
Yeah, I think the current, what's the wording on the current one?
In the local law, the language under minimum quals that I think you're referring to, Ben, is number 3, an equivalent combination of training and experience listed above. I think that's what you're referring to. That's in the local law, but
That
it's not.
sounds a lot better than a four-year degree, doesn't it?
Depends on what you're looking for. I mean,
Yeah,
if you
well,
want to
I'm
leave the
saying-
door open for that possibility, that individual, then you put the language in.
It depends if you spent your career in community college.
Yeah, I'm not-
But is everybody good with that? He's suggesting that we add, not change, but
Change,
add
right.
But add that.
this, if you could read that again, Fred?
Any equivalent combination of training and experience listed above.
Does anyone object to adding that as a qualification?
I have no
What that allows
objection.
is what Ben's talking about.
Excuse me. I have no objection, but I'd like to see the number of years of experience that he's exemplified.
I think that might come out at the interview process. You might get somebody who has training and experience, and the interview group in this body would ask the question, how much experience do you have? Tell us what it is and why that particular person is qualified to do the job. That might be hard to quantify in this document, but I understand the question.
I think Mike has a suggestion.
Yeah, based on the terminology that Fred was using, in a case like that, so, like a possession of a bachelor's degree and have minimum of 6 years, so, or any equivalent. So that would be 10 years experience if there's no degree. Then it would be 10 years of experience in responsible management, experience in private, public business or industrial enterprise.
Well, that's what I would like to see in writing as far as meeting the qualifications.
Okay.
Is that acceptable to you, Ben? Is that acceptable to you defining
Yeah, I mean,
equivalent as?
I don't have any problem with any of them because it's gonna come out in the resume anyhow what the experience is. So, I mean, you don't have to worry about getting the person in the room unless you know, you're satisfied with it when you're looking at the resume.
Yeah.
But we would, I'd like from a recruitment standpoint, a parameter. I like the idea of what you said, so if we utilize 10 years of experience, and I would normally say 10 years progressively responsible experience in a business situation, so then we can discern between those candidates. Being the optimist, I think we're going to get lots of candidates. And I'd like to be able to
You may get less quiet candidates, but I think you'll get better qualified people.
And I would like to be able to be sure that we know where the.
And that's what we want. We want good qualified people.
Yeah.
that's
So
what
is
I-
that agreeable to use Mike saying 10 years of progressively responsible experience? Does anyone object to that language? All righty.
I guess the only thing I got a little qualm with that is basically we're taking out any young, talented, 2, 3